I'm showing y'all, the whole world, how corrupted the state of Louisiana is. I'm an innocent man. Yes, in my past, I made mistakes. You know what I'm saying? I ain't gonna say mistakes. I was just young. You know what I'm saying? But the system has failed a lot of people and not just me.
That New Orleans escapee sounds like he may be telling the truth about being innocent. He was locked up for some type of DV charges involving putting his hands around his girlfriend's throat. Who knows? But what's got me interested in this New Orleans escape case isn't like Mr. Massey posting his social media location. The other guy that's still out and hasn't been seen since the day that they got away was this guy Groves.
Nearly 6 years after 2 people were killed and 2 others injured in a Mardi Gras Day shooting, the shooter has been found guilty. In 2018, Derek Groves fired at a group gathered for a barbecue in the lower 9th Ward.
And Groves' girlfriend was taken into custody yesterday there's some evidence on his damn tablet that he talked to her on a tablet and set up some other phone calls. So they charged her with simple conspiracy to escape, but they don't really know how she helped him.
The U.S. Marshal's Office says Dariana Burton, the girlfriend of Derek Groves, was taken into custody outside of a home in New Orleans on St. Peter Street today around noon. Burton is accused of assisting inmate Derek Groves, who escaped from the Orleans Justice Center nearly 1 month ago.
That woman met him while she was a guard at that same place he escaped from. She had been fired because she got caught bringing in tobacco and reefers. And
Department in America had a more richly deserved reputation for incompetence, corruption, and brutality than the New Orleans Police Department. In the early 90s, crime soared in New Orleans on the streets and inside the police department.
Now, what's important to know about Mr. Groves is his grandmother was this back in 1994. She was Mr. Groves' grandmother when she was about 30 years old, was trying to be a good member of the community. She saw a New Orleans police officer, or 2 of them, pistol whipping a guy and roughing him up.
Kim Groves was a young mother of 3 who'd filed a complaint against a cop for brutalizing a teenager. Attorney Mary Howell, a prominent critic of the New Orleans police, now represents the family of Kim Groves.
She was assassinated. She was murdered by Len Davis.
He was a cop.
He was a cop.
The FBI had Officer Davis under surveillance for drug activity and actually recorded him setting up the assassination of Kim Groves.
It was like the audio version of Rodney King for this city. The police officer circling her house in the police car, calling the hitman about come do her now, describing the clothing she's wearing.
Man, that hoe standing out there right now with black jeans, a black coat, and a bitch brown skin with light brown eyes. I got the phone on and the radio. After it's done, go straight uptown and call me.
So you wonder why this culture of, no snitching and all that is so strong, and they can't solve crimes in neighborhoods, or they can't bring the crime rate down. Well,
he would, quote, handle the 30, meaning he was going to handle the investigation of her death so that no one would ever be held accountable for it. The hitman's like running late. He's having like child care problems. It's like something out of Pulp Fiction. And then finally he goes over there, kills her children hear the shots and rush out and find their mother dead in the street, and then you hear him celebrating her death.
From what I'm hearing from the people, it's definitely a done deal.
And it was like a chill that went through the heart of, I think, almost everyone in this city.
Murdered by a hitman paid for by an on-duty cop. What would your respect for the law be?
2 or 3 months later, had a female officer that was arrested for killing another police officer. Right after that, had another police officer suspected of being a serial murderer. We had a couple officers that were arrested for drug activity. And also, the day I was being sworn in, a young lady was killed on the order of a police officer. Kim Groves was killed the day I was sworn in.
Why should you respect the law? I have murder victims in my family. I know people, as probably some of you watching, or maybe some of you may have multiple. My friend, I think like his brother, father, uncle, and mother's boyfriend all were murdered, unsolved, many people I know's father, their father didn't abandon them. Their father was murdered. Or someone I know, he wanted to tell a story. I said don't tell that story in public. He's currently locked up. If he sees this, shout out to him. About when he was 5, guy came in the window. His father was at work, and a mother and father. His father was at work. Guy comes in the window, puts a knife to his throat. 5. And ties him up, and then goes in another room and grapes his mother. He had to listen to it. So, man, you traumatize your whole life. So no wonder. I think that people get indoctrinated into this, don't talk to the police. It's because when you're a little kid even, and they're telling you a school called, well, if something happens, call the police or something. But you're seeing things happen to your own family members or you, and the police are of no help. So why would you call the police about anything or think that they even were there to help you? So Groves, he's convicted, I think, of 2 murders and charged with 2 more. Now, I don't know the circumstances. Maybe he's a bad guy. Who knows? But, like, again, if you grew up in Len Davis, the NOPD cop put a hit on your grandmother that was executed, pulled off by a guy in front of her own home, what would you think about anything, about anyone's life or anything?
And Officer Davis, the U.S. attorney, put him on death row. And why were New Orleans police so corrupt? For one thing, they were among the lowest paid cops in America. For extra income, officers worked as rent-a-cops for just about anybody. That was always a big thing in New Orleans.
Yeah, always a big thing.
You'd always go around to these restaurants, particularly in the quarter,
yeah,
and you would see a uniformed policeman with a sidearm standing outside.
An officer could put on this uniform and make more money working in an outside paid detail than they could working for the city.
Pennington prohibited police from working in bars and nightclubs. At the same time, he won a huge raise for the cops, whose starting salary was just $16,000 a year. That raise, Pennington hoped, would attract better cops and remove some temptation for corruption. But the mess inside the New Orleans Police Department was just one of his problems. On the streets of the city, violent crime was out of control. And in his first year, Chief Pennington could do little to bring it down.
And that's why the same cities, the same neighborhoods, year after decade, got the highest crime. If you look at the crime statistics in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it's all the same cities. They change. Sometimes one is number 1 and one is number 6, but it's always New Orleans and D.C. and Memphis and Detroit, St. Louis, Baltimore, and then, of course, certain neighborhoods in bigger cities, you know, parts of Brooklyn and Harlem and South Central and part of the south side of Chicago, and even worse, part of the west side of Chicago. But it's not just the people. It's the amount of incompetent, corrupt, crooked, and that's before you even get to racist police and police departments, or just totally underfunded police departments. Jackson, Mississippi's been the murder capital for the last, or it had a really high murder rate a couple years ago. I think it had 9 homicide detectives for 99 murders. You're probably going to get away with it.
Recently, District Commander Louis Dabdou briefed his officers before they swept the streets searching for drug dealers.
We all know, and I think we'll all agree, that the person that is robbing us, sticking pistols in grandmothers' faces, knocking people over, snatching their purses, is your street vagrant, your crackheads, your dope fiends, your winos, whatever you want to call them. Those are the persons who are committing the crimes. However, it's a whole lot easier to catch that same person who's that drug abuser standing on the corner with a crack pipe in his pocket, hanging out on the corner all loaded with himself. So we're going after it from a different angle. That's the angle we're going after today.
While we were on hand, Dabdou's forces detained teenagers in what cops say is a drug zone. The young men were playing football and the cops found no evidence of drugs. This, says attorney Mary Howe, is an example of the cops going too far.
It is not a crime to be a young black man playing football in New Orleans.
New Orleans at the time that Len Davis had Mr. Groves' grandmother killed, NOPD police, New Orleans police, they were making, now it's 30 years ago, but it's not that long. They're making $300 a week to be a cop. $300 a week. Not a lot of money. I think in Detroit at that time, maybe they were making $500 a week, which still isn't, but it was okay for back then. So this is the Southern tradition of low taxes. I remember my friend, did he go to Grambling, or maybe he just went to help somebody move on to the Grambling campus or something. But when he was down there, the police would come on the radio, or they would have like a radio announcement, you know, you should stay inside after dark because the New Orleans Police Department can't protect you. I think they did that in Detroit a few years ago. Or no, the Detroit chief of police said everybody should get a CCW, carry concealed, because the Detroit police can't protect you in your home. And I got a personal story about escape from New Orleans. Now, he ended up doing his time, so I ain't gonna say his man, but if he sees this, shout out to Uncle. Ended up turning himself in, but in about 90 or something like that, 89, I don't know. He went to New Orleans to do a deal that some people had set up in prison. I think it was 50 slizzabs. So he meets people while he's in New Orleans. He does the deal and he sells it all while he's there. So he's going to get another, he's going to run it back before he brings it back to Detroit. And something happened. Maybe he was in the hotel too long and they got suspicious, or somehow the police got involved. So he gets caught with all this, like a lot. So he's in that same New Orleans jail. And him and like 10 guys dip out. They escape. Everyone, he said, like everyone, this is when New Orleans was the murder capital. He said everyone was in there for murder. Like the whole jail was basically just murderers except him. But so they break out. All these other guys are just poverty-stricken guys from the projects. They basically go back like to their registered address or something. So they all get caught. But he had, well, you know, he had resources. He gets into somebody's backyard or something. And he's like, yo, call this phone number in Detroit. They're going to wire you some money right now. And whoever's backyard he went into, I think this is the story. They wired him some money. However it was, he gets back to Detroit. And he stayed out for a while. And then they were like so incompetent, or they might have been embarrassed about the breakout, or I don't know if it was even put in the news or something, because they didn't charge him with the breakout. He didn't get any new charges, or maybe it was just part of the deal he'd worked to turn himself in. I mean, he did like 10 years in the feds for the initial charge. So I know someone who broke out of that same jail and got away. Like he probably could have lived, who knows? He might have been able to stay out, but he figured he didn't want to live on the run. So there's some different information about the New Orleans breakout.
Well, 37 death row inmate sentences have been commuted. One final promise pushed by the Biden administration with less than a month in office.
Well, their lives were spared today ahead of the Trump administration's promise to continue the federal death penalty. Tonight, we have learned that a former NOPD officer was among those whose sentences were commuted.
Len Davis, the man who you see right behind us, was sentenced for having a woman killed for filing a brutality complaint against him after being linked to numerous drug dealers in New Orleans. He was also dubbed the Desire Terrorist because of his aggressive policing style.
WDSU reporter Shay O'Connor is live with reaction now from those who knew the victim's family and the former officer. What are they saying, Shay?
Stella and Randy. It's here in the lower Ninth Ward where that mother of three was actually shot execution style after she filed a brutality complaint against the officer. Now, it's been 30 years that her children have had to live without her. I actually spoke with council member Oliver Thomas, who was on the council back then when it all went down.
My brother knew her mother very well. I knew of her because we all grew up in the lower Ninth Ward.
Kim Groves shot and killed in front of her home in October of 1994.
It was a sad time for all of us who lived in that neighborhood because all she was trying to do was the right thing.
After police say she filed a brutality complaint against former NOPD officer Len Davis.
In the city of New Orleans, if you didn't know about it, it's probably the most unique city in America. It has its own unique history. People, I've been there once. The food and the music's great. I mean, it's a pretty, I don't know, it had like a dark vibe to it. It's cool for a couple days. I didn't care for it. Seemed dangerous and poor. It just seemed like a hot Detroit with less police. I hope whatever is the proper outcome for the two guys that are still out, whatever justice is, if there even is such a thing, I hope it comes to them. I'll profit American dope.